join me on the adventure, and welcome to the Mysterious Adventures Podcast. I am your host, Paladino Joey, or Joey Awijan. Mysterious Adventures is available on all of your favorite podcasting apps, and I thank each and every one of you once and always for downloading and listening to this show. It is a great pleasure to be back on board with you once again today, and I deeply apologize for the hiatus once again. Again, it's like you figure I step away from the lawn service for the most part, and then I don't know, it's just time is tough to do this, and I prefer to do this when nobody else is in the house, the house or apartment, to do this podcast. So my apologies, as that's not been available all too much free time to be able to actually record this podcast. So I deeply, deeply apologize, but definitely a couple of ideas in the hopper. And today we're going to talk about something that kind of popped up very recently on an episode of Appalachian Intelligence again. So it was a guest they had on where he talked about the skeleton in armor. The skeleton in armor. Very interesting conversation there. So yeah, the skeleton in armor that was found in Massachusetts. When he just talked about it, it was near the end of the episode, and it was a very brief little blip where he's like, the guest was basically like, there was like on the border of Massachusetts that they found a skeleton in a full suit of armor, and it's like, oh, like my eyebrows just jumped up, and I'm like, that's a topic that I'm interested in, and I started doing a little research and such, and I was like, this could be an episode of Mysterious Adventures, something that wouldn't maybe take a super long amount of time to put together, and we could get a show out and have some interesting conversation, because it is a mysterious adventure, no doubt about it. And it also reeks of a bit of a cover-up as well to things in some ways. Now, the evidence is kind of, in terms of where this person came from or what their origins are, is debated a bit. I mean, right now I'm holding an artifact that I just got off of eBay, and it is authentic. Certificate of authenticity, all that, but you can also look at it I'm looking at it right now, and it looks, you can tell it's been around for many, many years. It's anywhere from maybe 500 to 1,000 years old, I'm guessing. It is a spear tip, like Native American spear tip. Too long to be an arrowhead. It looks a little small for a spear, but it must not have been a very large spear, that type of thing. But it could definitely do some damage, I'm sure, back in the day. So a spear tip, a stone spear tip, which again, usually if it's stone, it's a long, long, long time ago. So very old, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 years ago. Anyhow, the reason why I would bring that up is because, this skeleton that was buried in a suit of armor also had arrowheads with it, so that's kind of strange and confusing. Yet, is it though? Is it? Did knights use bows and arrows? Oh wait, they did. So yeah, hello. Anyhow, so let's get to the point here. The skeleton in armor, and again, this came from the host of the show. I'll bring it up. Might as well. Obviously, I said Appalachian Intelligence, but the guest that joined Appalachian Intelligence has his own podcast, which is huge, bigger than both of us by 1,000,000 miles. My family thinks I'm crazy. So yes, Mark Steves Jr. And again, it was near the end of the episode when he talked about somebody buried in a suit of armor and like in the East Coast, like Massachusetts. And it's like, holy cow, suit of armor. Like that is really interesting. Like it could be from Europe or whatever. So anyhow, let's get to the point. The skeleton in armor, which is the title of the episode, is the name given to a skeleton associated with metal, bark, and cloth artifacts, which was unearthed in Fall River, Massachusetts in 1832. The skeleton was subsequently destroyed in a fire in 1843, so that kind of figures. It is also the name of a poem by Henry Wadslow Longfellow. Interesting. If you'd like to hear the poem, I guess look it up yourself. We're not here to talk about poems necessarily. But among the curiosities of peculiar interest in the cabinets of the Fall River situation here was the entire skeleton of a man. The entire skeleton. Everything looked very old, basically. The New World had speculated as much. The skeleton was found in the year 1832, which we've mentioned over and over again, in a sand or grave bank, a little east of the Unitarian meeting house by some persons while digging away and removing a portion of the bank. Why they were doing that, not really sure. So really interesting. It is kind of like near the site right now by the site that's called Gasworks, corner of Hartwell and Fifth Streets. So that's in Massachusetts, of course. I've said 15 times. The skeleton was found near the surface in a sitting posture. So that's the interesting part. The sitting posture, the leg bones were doubled upon the thigh bones. The leg bone doubled on the thigh bone. Okay, sorry. I know it feels like a song as well. Like those, science songs, whatever, like medical stuff. The thighs brought up nearly parallel with the body. It was in perfect. Yeah, it stood remarkably well. It stood the test of exposure and such. Covering the sternum was a triangular plate of brass. Now, that's a big note right there. A triangular plate of brass, which could help defeat some conversation that's going to come up here shortly. Somewhat corroded by time, of course, so who knows? Another, kind of like this arrowhead here, could be anywhere from 500 to 1,000 years ago. Or spearhead, but that doesn't mean it's Native American, though. The spearhead is almost 99.9% chance the spearhead is brass and Native Americans. Yes, we'll get to that in a minute. Like we said, the sitting posture and on the thigh bones, and there's even a sketch. Like you'll see that in the title of the episode. That's the sketch, and look like what it looked like at the time. So how people sketched it. Kind of losing where I'm at in a lot of ways. Again, covering the sternum was a plate of brass, somewhat corroded by time, and around the body was a broad belt made of small brass tubes, 4 or 5 inches in length, and about the size of a pipe stem, placed parallel and close to each other. Arrowheads made of copper or brass, again, arrowheads made of copper or brass were also found in the grave with the skeleton. Also, you see, like, yes, okay, we'll get to that in a second. Again, metal. You notice that's metal? Metallic. What's this spearhead made out of? Stone. Yes, did you hear that sound? That's stone. Okay, so, again, that these were remains of an Indian. So they believe these were an Indian, seem to be generally conceded. So that was at the time, I guess. The configuration of the skull, the position in which the skeleton was found, and the additional fact that parts of other skeletons were found near the same place renders it nearly certain that these were the bones of an Indian or Native American. Not necessarily, because you know how, sometimes giants were buried in the same, were buried in giant mounds, and the Native Americans were also buried there later on. Something tells me that this skeleton with brass armor was buried there earlier, possibly. But then again, maybe he was killed by Native Americans at one point. So who knows? Who knows the cause of death for this individual? But probably was killed at some point, unfortunately. Kind of like kill or be killed in those days, it seemed like. Another description of the artifact written by John Stark, a lawyer in Galena, Illinois, appeared in 1837. Yep, they're talking about that. It's in a American magazine of useful and entertaining knowledge. Okay, Stark argues that the construction of the arrows showed that they were not made by Indians. So I agree with Stark, and compared the bracelets with anklets with some found at the Mayan site. A Mayan site, huh? Of Planet, in which he described as Asiatic race. Asiatic race. Interesting. In that case, Asiatic race. Which you can kind of guess what that means, like Asia. So, like, I don't know, but brass armor, huh? What's he supposed to be? Some kind of samurai or something from many years ago? I mean, that's kind of a weird one, but hey, it's different. Who knows? Possibly. Everybody wants to keep coming back to that it is. Now, there's another one here, too. Some people want to talk about that it came from the crew of a Phoenician vessel. That could mean, again, possibly way back. Phoenician vessel. The spot where they were found was on the sea coast. So these are like the sea there. And the immediate neighborhood of Digton Rock, famed for its hieroglyphic inscriptions, of which no sufficient explanation has yet to be given. Yeah, there's some real interesting stuff where you'll find Phoenician stuff. You'll see hieroglyphics and such, which, what the heck is that doing here? So some of that sounds like pre-Adamic stuff, possibly. Well, maybe not pre-Adamic, but pre-flood even, because, well, Pangea, yeah, yeah. Once upon a time, I don't know. It's interesting to think about, isn't it? Um, so near where the Brock Basin brazen vessels have been found, if the latter hypothesis be adopted, a part is that these mariners, the unwilling and unfortunate discoverers of a new world, so they actually came here by accident probably, lived some time after they landed, and having written their names perhaps in epitaphs upon the rock at Dayton, died and were buried by the natives. Yeah, so maybe they were killed by the natives. Could be like what are we doing here? This is a strange place. I'm not sure. And then they came and maybe killed them. So some people do believe that it was a Native American. They say besides the other brass arrowheads mentioned above, at least one identical breastplate has been found, and is known that traders sold the Indians brass kettles. They sold them brass kettles from which they made arrowheads. Interesting. Arrowheads described as precisely similar were used by the Iroquois in the 17th century. But, I mean, see, the arrowheads, maybe, who knows, maybe they put the arrowheads there to say, well, this is what we killed them with. Who knows? It's very strange to imagine. But it's very interesting. There's even a book out there that came, yep, there's a poem here, Longfellow, from way back in those days. Very crazy. See, like you asked the question, did Native Americans wear brass armor? But no, traditional Native Americans' armor was not primarily made of brass. Indigenous warriors primarily utilized local, accessible materials like hardened animal hide, wood, and bone. Yeah, see, that sounds much more realistic. They may have had some copper and bronze, but not brass. See, it just sounds strange. It really does. Brass tended to come more from like Greece. That's what they talked about, like Greece, something like that, like over that way. And who knows, like Greece maybe could be related to Phoenician again as well, because that's kind of like the general area, Mediterranean. So it's like it may have been a Mediterranean person that maybe came here on accident. Who knows? Like before Christopher Columbus, and they landed in the Massachusetts area of all places, similar to what the Pilgrims did, and were, well, maybe eventually taken out, unfortunately. So it's really interesting. Because like you want to ask the question, like who wore brass armor? Like what people wore brass armor? That's the $1 million question. That's the $1 million question that people would want to know, because, I mean, was it really Native Americans? Don't think so. Oftentimes they come back to the conclusion of Greece and others. Yep, ancient Romans. That was another one brought up. And yep, ancient Romans, particularly high-ranking ones. That's interesting as well. So it looks a little different than what you'd expect from the other one, the image of the sketch. But you never know, again, as well, how long they were there. There was even like a weird ghostly haunting of a Roman soldier that had ventured off all the way to Vietnam. It was because there was conversations that some Romans actually wound up in Vietnam and may have been killed long, long ago. They were kind of lost there, and they ended up getting killed, like, over the course of time. In Vietnam, we're talking we're talking way, way, way back. So like in the days of the Romans, like over like biblical times, possibly. So really interesting conversations there. Extremely, because I mean Rome. I mean that's way the heck back in the day. So I mean Roman soldiers, again. That's more like biblical times. This isn't like knights. Like thee and thou. This isn't like knights in England and such, where you're talking like medieval times. This is before that. So very interesting when you think about that. Oh, they say brass. Yeah, brass is a copper zinc alloy. Yeah, that's where it came from. Where they, I just don't think Native Americans wore brass armor. I just don't. And they continue to conclude that, hey, it's a Native American. They even say it was a Native American woman. And I come back with, no way. I just don't. Yeah, there's the legend, of course. This one's Westford though, Westford Night, Massachusetts. No, I'm messing this up. A local lore claims that Saint James Gunn, a Knight Templar, yeah, this one's really interesting, who traveled with Prince Henry Sinclair's 1398 expedition, died in Massachusetts. That's a really interesting one. The legend states a carving on a rock and Depot memorializes his grave. Then they say the reality, there is no factual evidence of this pre-Columbian voyage. Historians believe the carving consists of natural glacial scratches combined with later graffiti, although supporters continue to debate this, the site. Interesting. See, that's another one where it's similar, where another suit of armor, possibly in Massachusetts of all places, 1398. I almost kind of say, why the heck not? Like, why the heck not? It's fun to speculate. Obviously, again, it's conjecture. It's not something we can all come out and be like, yep, this is what happened, concluded, But who's to say? Who's to say it? Who's to say this kind of thing didn't happen? Of course it's possible. Of course it is. And the other one, obviously, it did happen when it comes to the skeleton and armor. That absolutely did happen because they found it. The legend in that one, again, we'll go back to it again, kind of in review, in 1832. Not quite the 1300s. This is when it was found, though. Who knows when the person actually was buried there. In 1832, a skeleton was unearthed in Fall River, Massachusetts, associated with metal artifacts, brass plates, and arrowheads. Again, brass plates and arrowheads. It became the subject of the poem, The Skeleton in Armor, which romanticized the remains of as an ancient Viking. So they think it was an ancient Viking explorer, but who knows? I mean, that's also a possibility, but I'm thinking, yeah, it sounds more like something Mediterranean, which would, again, well, Italy, Rome is Mediterranean. So yes, it is. Yes, it is. The reality, of course, according to Google, Google can be, they wanted you to believe what they want you to believe. Later, archaeological investigation identified the remains as those of a Native American woman, and the armor was likely traditional copper or brass plating. But they didn't have brass. Copper, maybe, because there's plenty of copper over here, but brass? I don't know. Brass is a little extra going on to make brass versus copper. Copper is copper, Brass there's more to making brass. Excuse me. Tragically, the physical remains and artifacts were destroyed in a fire in 1843, which is really depressing at the end of the day. Maybe it was on purpose, just like some of the, like the Nephilim bones that were just, whenever there's a Nephilim skeleton are found, giant skeleton, giant bones are found, the Smithsonian would come and get it, and you never see or hear from them again, and they'd be like, we don't know what you're talking about, go away. That's basically what's been happening forever. Giant bones found in people's yards and people's farmland anyway, in Minnesota of all places. Kind of where I come from? Yeah, I come from Golden Valley, Minnesota, if you're curious. If you're listening from God knows, you could be from anywhere. You might be from England and such, and I do appreciate listeners from all over the world that do listen to this show. I also appreciate that the fact that this show's grown a tiny bit, despite the fact that I haven't been around, the fact that I haven't been recording as much lately, that a lot of you have been, that people have been listening to the older episodes, and those have been building, and it's really nice to see, and I just, really appreciate it, and I hope you like the show, and you please continue to listen. I know some of these, some of the analytics there's no way they're accurate, but some might be. West Virginia supposedly is doing really well, so I appreciate that. West Virginia listening to the show, Ohio, Illinois, Florida, California. So, and again, the fact that I haven't been recording much, it's probably like losing track of where the heck the listeners are coming from. So, but again, a lot of the older episodes have been doing pretty well. The recent ones kind of have been stagnant. Just a little conversation there. Sorry for going off into that. You did not necessarily come here to hear about that. But I keep coming back to it. It just, it can't be. I don't think it's a Native American. I don't. The conclusion I come to is it's probably someone from the Mediterranean area, possibly a Roman soldier of some sorts, a Roman person, soldier, maybe not a high-ranking person or anything, or possibly even like Greece, quite possibly, which might be weird a little bit, but what the heck? That's what it looks to be, more of somebody from Mediterranean origins versus a Native American. They keep saying Indian. I feel better saying Native American versus Indian. I don't know, like the whole conversation about calling Native Americans Indians was because way back in the day, people thought that they had reached India. People thought they had reached India, like Christopher Columbus and such. And it's like, no, this is a completely different place. They're not Indians, they're Native Americans. But of course, we didn't necessarily use the name America a whole lot at the time. But I guess there was Amerigo. That's where the name came from way back. That was going down into South America. Yes. Fascinating stuff. Yep, they continue to talk about, yep, that they think it was a Native American woman of all things. And I don't know. I guess anything's possible, but to me, my conclusion is it is somebody from the Mediterranean at the end of the day. So again, not really a large show here, but a interesting conversation, a mysterious adventure. Hey, if you'd like to have a conversation about this or other episodes in the past, don't be afraid to record yourself a little. Every smart device out there has a free voice recorder on it, Apple, Samsung, or whatever. You can open up the free voice recording app. They're built-in apps on every smart device on the planet, or your laptop or desktop or whatever. You can record. Just you want to send a audio submission to the show, it'd be greatly appreciated. I'd love to hear from you. I really would. Call in, give your opinions about something, or maybe a scary story or something, or email your scary story or something that you might have and such. I remember Brian Jensen a while back talked about that he used to get scratched a lot. So yeah, he used to get scratched. So like the 3 scratches, which has been a thing out there, the monster bottles have that 3 scratch look, which is really creepy. I don't know why Monster would want to do that. That looks demonic. And obviously when you get the 3 scratches on your back or whatever, that's it's demonic. 3 scratch marks. There's nothing good about that whatsoever. It's all about like celebrating the third that betrayed the Lord and went with Lucifer. So that's pretty scary stuff. You don't want to go down that road, that's for sure. What those fallen angels and such did. Obviously, no, this skeleton is not a Nephilim or anything, but it's a mystery. It's a mystery as to where the origins are truly from. It's debated and such, Native American, Roman, Greece, something like that. But yeah, Roman, yeah, that's a really fascinating possibility, and it could have happened because I think they kind of went all over the place. They did go all over the place. I mean, wasn't England technically like part of Rome, the Roman Empire as well, like way back in biblical times? So like that same area, it covered pretty much almost the whole world for a long period of time. So it's extremely fascinating. And again, how some soldiers may have actually ventured all the way into Vietnam of all places. Like that's a mysterious adventure in itself as well. I'm not sure if I do a whole episode on it. I could even talk about it now, possibly, which would be really weird. That supposedly that did possibly happen. There's no historical records. Like you look up Google and such, they talk about there's no historical records of them going into Vietnam. But however, the phrase Roman soldier in Vietnam most commonly refers to the Roman surname, U.S. military veterans. Oh, come on, that's weird. Captain Joseph Roman. Well, God bless you. Private First Class Jeremiah Roman. Okay, well, God bless you guys. Yep. There was conversation about it, and it's like, it's not here, though. You know how Google is. They're like, nope, never happened, go away. A lot of times there is that. So that is kind of frustrating. Historical trade connections between ancient Roman Empire and ancient Vietnam, such as Roman beads and coins found in Southeast Asia. Well, I mean, you never know. You really never know. And again, how somebody there in Vietnam saw like a basically an apparition of a Roman soldier way back in the, that clearly was from way back around biblical times, like dressed in garb from those days. So It's fascinating. It's a fascinating thing. That was at the end of a Haunted Cosmos episode. That is a heck of a podcast as well. Um, they don't really need my help. I could sure use theirs. Shout out to Mysterious Adventures podcast. That'd be awesome. But that was a really interesting one. And when I heard that, like my jaw dropped. Like, whoa, Roman soldier in Vietnam. That there was rumors about Roman soldiers that maybe ventured a little too far, and it just, they got lost and stuck there basically thousands of years ago. So, or 1500-ish years ago. We're talking, way, 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 way back in the day. So, what the heck? Yeah, really fascinating. What is this? I'm seeing something here. No, this is nonsense. Sometimes you see stuff and it's like, what the heck? So it's a real interesting conversation. I forget what episode it was, but it's one of the Haunted Cosmos from around like a year ago or so. And I remember my jaw just dropped when I heard that. So, yep, but we're going to try to bring more and more conversation like this, maybe some deeper conversation into something larger. Obviously, I have ideas coming up. I've been jotting them down and all that, but then just haven't gotten around to things, and I deeply apologize. Like a Days of Noah series, a Book of Enoch series, that could be huge. Zeus and Hercules, Chimeras, that's kind of a mix of thing. That would be like Golden Axe, we did that. Noah's Ark being found, Jekyll Island, Nephilim, that's a real good one. Atlantis, you could go on forever with that. Euphrates, the foreign angels. Euphrates River, the foreign angels, four fallen angels is what I'm trying to say. Bases on the moon, Jupiter, Rahab or Apollo. That would be like the planet in between Mars and Jupiter. Yeah, that was a really fascinating conversation we could go on and on about at some point. We might even talk about the Yamato. I thought I'd bring that up at some point. That would be that powerful battleship, Japanese battleship in World War II. Oh, yes, the glowing tornado in Blackwell, 1955. Fascinating. The glowing tornado. That's a great topic. The Bennington Triangle, the Perry-Rees map, mounds locally. Yeah, that would be around here. That look like Ohio Valley. Yep, I did an episode about that recently. Otzi the Iceman, really fascinating one. The skeleton armor, that's this one. And the Mandela effect. Like, we got to talk about that. I wanted to get Paul Caniff on here to talk about that one. All kinds of interesting stuff with that one. Like, Barron's, like a lot of you grew up that are my age that, remember the Berenstein Bears, right? But now it's called Berenstain Bears. And it's like, but it was Berenstein. It was always EI or IE, whatever. EI. It was always EI, Berenstein Bears. And now it's Berenstain, AI. Creepy and funny AI. We've done episodes about that, and there'll probably be more coming up as well, including stuff where it feels like it's just eliminating humans for certain things, but it's not really making anything easier. It's actually complicating things in a lot of ways. And it kind of sucks. I'm not a big fan, not a big supporter. And eventually, I don't know, watch out. Watch out. I mean, the whole Rise of the Machines thing, it's not a movie. And it's a lot deeper than just machines taking over. It's what's controlling the machines through the AI. Something by the name of demons. Yeah, in my opinion. Not of God. Not of God at all. Be careful when it comes to AI and all of that. I'm not a fan of that stuff at all. I don't even know. I want to say it has uses and such, but I'm afraid to even say that when you think about what AI can be and what it can turn into and what damage it could do to a person and all of that and what it could lead towards. It's pretty scary. But with that said, I think I've kind of made some points here. The skeleton and armor, obviously, just a cool, interesting topic to talk about. A very interesting topic to talk about when it comes to just like, wow, like somebody in a full suit, like in a suit of armor buried in Massachusetts. It's like, whoa, where'd that come from? And it's like, yeah, that could be at least a short episode to talk about on Mysterious Adventures. And it ended up being that. So with all of that said, if you could put a positive 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, it'd be greatly appreciated. Please share the show with your friends and such. I apologize if this isn't a spectacular production here on this particular episode. Wanted to get something out there. and felt this was an interesting topic. Hope I'm not kind of just walking all over myself over and over again here, repeating and such. Apologize if it feels like that a little bit, but I wanted to get something out there and for you to enjoy and to debate with your, maybe like debate about in your head or with your friends and family. And yeah, it's a pleasure. So hopefully we can get more of these out at the very least and get into some bigger ones coming up as well. Like Mandela Effect, that's a huge one. That might even be a series at some point. Otherwise, thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and join me on the next adventure.